Of course, I didn't know at that point that it's going to be the startup community the way we know it now.
Running a company is, like having a dementor on your head, like, if you've read Harry Potter,
Yes.
It sucks out all your energy and all your happiness.
Even today, the industry is largely unorganized. If you look at the total market size and if you look at all the organized players, all of us put together, we will still be less than 1% of the market.
A woman always works like a man with those kind of hours that she can put in till the time she has kids. At least women professionals need to have independence and freedom.
Yeah.
Because I felt that, I'm only sort of on my guard that this is a bias.
Yes.
But it's actually not. Hi everyone, welcome to Women Speak. It is a podcast by women for women, professionals and entrepreneurs. We have a very special guest here tonight with us. She is somebody who has been an entrepreneur for the last 9 years. She dons many hats. She's a woman professional. She's a mother of 2 twin girls. And she has started an amazing company to allow young professionals and young students to allow them to have living spaces. She is the co-founder at Zolo Stays and she is Sneha Choudhury. Welcome Sneha to our podcast.
Hi Surbhi, thank you so much for having me.
So your company has grown amazingly well. You're attuned to do 500 crores in revenue this year. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about your journey? How did you come about this idea of starting Zolo Stays? And how has been the last 9 years like?
So I finished my MBA and started working. I think I always knew that I want to get into entrepreneurship at some point in time, and I think that's primarily because of the familial roots that I have. My entire family is in business, so I belong to a very, very hardcore business Marwari family. I think it's somewhere deep down I knew that at some point I want to move to entrepreneurship. Of course, I didn't know at that point that it's going to be the startup community the way we know it now. So when I moved out of my first job and I was looking for a second job at that point in time. Things changed, so I moved back to India. I was looking for a job here, and then I thought that maybe it would be a good idea to just explore entrepreneurship and see where it goes. So it really started from there. Zolo is actually my third startup. So I started a couple of companies prior to this, which didn't go very well, and then we started this along with my previous co-founder Akhil, and here we are today. So when we started our previous company, we saw that a couple of our employees were living in startups. So our employees in the previous startup, right? They were living in PGs next to our office, and of course we were hardly paying them, so they were not living in the best PGs out there. Similarly, my sister had also moved to Bangalore at that point in time. Once I moved here, and she was also putting up in another PG next to Manita Tech Park. And so we used to obviously visit these guys often, right? And I think one goddamn day I needed to stay over at my sister's because it was so far away from where I was living. And I realized that this is not how I would want her to live or anyone else to live for that matter. So we clearly saw an opportunity there. We didn't know how large the market was. So, we backed that up with a couple of months of proper market research. So we went and saw how many PGs are out there, spoke to a lot of customers, spoke to a lot of providers, suppliers, to really understand the depth of the market. And we saw an opportunity for disruption because it's a large market. There was hardly any technology being integrated in the space. Unlike, say, a hotel industry or unlike, say, a travel industry, which got disrupted almost 20 years back, there was absolutely no technological disruption that had happened in this space. We also felt that the timing was right. The ecosystem was just warming up to more and more startups, which were not essentially tech only, but tech enabled. And I would say even similar to, let's say, a Zomato or several others, right? So we thought this is the right time. We have the right passion for it. We have the right zeal for it. We have the right enthusiasm for it. And we have the right data for it at this point in time. Of course, things changed very quickly from there on as well. But at that point, we thought this is the right combination of team, time, market, and opportunity. So we just grabbed it by the horns and got started.
Yes. So, people are reading about the funding winter and the fact that startups are struggling to raise funds, and the entire environment has changed from GMV to net pat and all that. So, you are a funded company. When did you decide to raise funds, and how has the funding journey been? And how would you compare? Because you started as bootstrapped and then you raised funds. So, how do you compare those journeys, and what do you have to say to our viewers about that?
So, look, I think after having a bootstrap, I wouldn't say a startup compared to what Zolo is today, but at least a journey. And then having been on the funded side of the ecosystem, I feel that these are two different ecosystems or two different worlds altogether. And both come with their own pros and cons, both come with their own challenges, both come with their own benefits. And therefore, I think more than really thinking about, oh, I should raise funds or I should not raise funds, it's really a question that you need to answer for yourself as to what kind of business do you want to build, what kind of personality do you have,
Right.
and what are your priorities in life, right? Because if you are on the bootstrap side, right, the challenges are obviously the fact that you have limited access to capital. So your growth is naturally restricted by the amount of resources at disposal that you have. But on the other side, if you do raise funds, you also it's basically like saying that with great power comes great responsibility, right? You have a responsibility towards your shareholders. You have a responsibility towards your investors. I would say the amount of answerability, the amount of pressure, the amount of accountability that you end up taking, which you may have taken even otherwise as an entrepreneur, but here because it's also externally led, it becomes significantly higher, right? So I think at the end of the day, it's really a call that you need to make as to what kind of person you are, and what are you willing to gain and what are you willing to sacrifice for that gain. There's really not a right or a wrong answer. It's really two sides of a coin,
Yeah.
sort of a thing.
Because running a bootstrap startup myself, I understand that it's so hard because you're always strapped for capital.
Yes,
You're
yes.
always in that rush. Okay, where is my next money going to come from? And figuring out and dividing all the capital into smaller parts, and funding what is most important at that time.
By the way, a lot of funded companies also keep going through that crisis. We are also constantly living from one round to another.
Yeah.
So while you may be living from one sales to another, you're also living from one sales to another in some sense. So I think that challenge never goes away, but it's just the magnitude of the problem becomes different.
Yes, true.
Yeah.
So you're also in a co-founding relationship with your husband.
Yes.
So you both are co-founders of your little baby startup and co-parenting your children.
Yes.
So how is that like, because I'm sure work moves home and home reflects at work. How do you guys compartmentalize your life and your business and professional and personal side of things?
So second most asked question after the first question of how did you start. So I think if I have to trace the journey, right? So we were co-founders first and we got married later. So I think that is one thing that I keep telling people, because it just means that for both of us, our professional ambitions were very important. For both of us, it was not either or it was like, for this I will compromise this or for this I will compromise this. Those are two different areas for us, and we are both equally passionate, or I would say we are both equally considerate about the fact that we both are extremely focused on our careers, but at the same time we have a life together. So I think that separation mentally we've been able to do in terms of at the philosophical level. At the tactical level, yeah, honestly, I think in the first up until I had kids, to be honest, right, which was only in 2021. I think from 2015 when we started the company till 2020, I don't think there was a difference between work and life. I think it was work. 3 days out of 6 days. And back then we used to work 7 days. So back then there was no concept of Sunday and all. In fact, we used to schedule all our interviews and all the other
On the
things on
weekends.
Sundays because we didn't want to waste time during the weekdays, so to say. And 3 days out of 7 days, I used to sleep in office because it's too late and I want to work and I didn't want to waste time going back, and I wasn't living very close to office at that point in time because was work coming home? Yes. Was home going to office? No, because there was no home. It was just work. Honestly, it was just work. So it was really like, and in fact, Nikhil had come up with this whole tagline, which I've quoted several times, that there was no work-life balance. It is work-life continuum. And it just continues in that sense, right?
Yeah.
I think after having kids, that's the biggest shift that has happened in my life, at least. So what I've done very, very consciously is that because again, I really wanted to balance both. I don't think I'm doing a good job at it at this point in time. But I didn't want to again sacrifice my professional career because of kids. But at the same time, I didn't want to miss out on their
Growing up.
on their childhood, and especially because I have twins, so I don't think I'm going to have more kids. So it's just one shot for me, right? So what I've done is I've really drawn very hard lines in terms of my work and my personal life. So I'm very disciplined about my timing. So I go to work.
Right.
And when I'm at work, I'm at work. I will not even look into the camera to check what my kids are doing or, whatever. I've over-invested in help. So I think that I really have to call out that I've been able to do my work because there are other women who are taking care of my kids when I'm away from them. And when I'm at home, I'm at home. So I work very long hours even now. So I'm still working about 11 to 12 hours every day at office. But then when I go home, I'm at home. So I will not check my emails. I will not take calls unless somebody calls me. So people also don't call. I think my team has also been extremely supportive in that sense. That they will not call unless there is something that really needs my attention. So I keep it very, very hard-lined in that sense, unless, of course, something has to overlap. At the same time, what I'm also trying to do is I'm also trying to get my kids to become very accustomed to my place of work. So, for example, every Saturday we have this routine. Since they started walking, I've been bringing them to office every Saturday with me. So they spend time in the office.
Yeah.
Then we go out, we have a routine, we go to the temple and then we go have ice cream and then we go to the fish shop. So it's like a routine that we have. So I've been trying to follow that on Saturdays so that, they also sort of understand that this is mama's place of work and, this is mama's office and all of that.
And I've seen, kids adapt very quickly.
Yes.
And I always tell, women who are asking me that a woman always works like a man with those kind of hours that she can put in till the time she has kids. And once you have kids, your entire life changes and you need to compartmentalize it between work and personal.
Yes.
Because you have stop times.
Yes.
When you're just, you don't have kids, you don't have additional responsibilities, you can work as long as you want. But the moment you have kids, you need to bring in an amount of discipline.
Yes.
Which is very hard to come to terms with.
Yes.
Because you feel that you have a lot of potential and work inside you to give out there, but you have to stop at a stop deadline.
And opposite as well. That, you feel that
and then
there's so much more time you would want to spend with your kids. But again, there's a stop line over there, right?
Yes, that's also true. And I think what you said is you said it beautifully that, it's the work-life integration that works where, you're bringing your kids to work and familiarizing them with your job and everything.
Yes.
And even my daughter is already saying that, when I grow up, I'll work at the mom store. So I was like, very happy about it.
So cute, yeah.
So, a lot of women professionals, they find it a sort of a tipping point when they reach motherhood. Yeah, they have to plan their careers around it. They know that a certain break is required, which is the maternity leave of 6 months, which is the mandated one, but they know that the journey is a little longer. So a lot of women struggle at that point to figure out whether they should continue working or, they should take a break. Why don't you share your journey about what you did and how did you ease motherhood back into your professional life?
So I think before I get into how I would not say managed, how I struggled with managing the two. I would talk about the fact that I took about 2 years of break in total. So I had a very difficult pregnancy, and then post pregnancy was also extremely difficult for me because of several complications due to COVID and age and all of that. So I took a longish break. I took a break for almost 2 years, and then I joined back when my kids had turned one already. So I think in terms of the dilemma, right, of whether we should take a break, whether I should continue, whether I should like take a break for a few years till my kid turns, let's say 3 or 4, and then join back work. I think my answer would be that there is no answer. There is no good answer to this question. However, I will share that I think after a point, right, and let's say after 6 months, after 1 year, even though I had my own startup, even though I have worked for nearly, I mean, post MBA, I have worked for 7 years. Before that, I worked for 2 years. Before that, I worked for a few years. So I have worked for a while. I've been a good student and all of that. But in spite of that, as the break became longer, and I hate to call it break, I would say maternity work.
Yeah.
So as the maternity work became longer, uh, I was finding it more and more difficult to think about getting back to work because of two reasons. One is because I think at some point in time I started feeling that I've lost touch with everything. I don't know if I will remember anything. I don't know if I will be able to do work as I could, work earlier. I think it started getting into a zone where I started having a little bit of self-doubt with respect to whether I will be able to, do it again, or whether I will be able to work again, or whether my colleagues are going to judge me for taking such a long time off, etc. And I think the second challenge was that I just got a little comfortable, I feel. Like, in spite of all the work and everything else, look, the pressure of, not having to meet deadlines, not having to constantly be updated about different things, constantly having to push yourself professionally at different dimensions, constantly having to sort of, in some sense, keep a new goal, right? Raise the bar. How do we do this better? How do we do that better? So I think that constant push or constant need for push, with that going out, right? At home, see, at the end of the day, there's only a limited scope of work that we have to do, right? Thankfully, we have help. So there's only limited amount of things that I can do. Now on that, there's only a limited amount of improvement that I could have done, or I had interest in doing, I would say. So it started becoming more relaxed for me, and I started becoming very comfortable in that space. I started becoming very comfortable with being in my pajamas the whole day. I started becoming very comfortable with, sleeping in the afternoon, reading a book when I wanted to. So I think the longer, you sort of end up doing that, and then the kids also at some point will start going to school, right? So then you have that whole window which is available. So naturally, there's a little bit of, I would say, relaxed and laid back, not in the negative sense, but really more in the relaxed sense that sort of creeps in, and that is a little hard to fight.
Yeah.
So while I would say that the right answer is that, as long as you want, as long as you feel comfortable, take a break, take it one step at a time and then get back to work. At the same time, I would say that don't make it so long that you find it very hard to get out of that mold, and you feel that you've become irrelevant, or you feel that you have been left behind and the world has moved on in some sense. So keeping that balance is very important if you do plan to continue working later. If you want to be a stay-at-home mom and you do not want to continue, and that is perfectly fine. There is absolutely no judgment on that. But if you want to continue working, then keeping the right balance of the break as well as relevance and routine is sort of very important.
Very nice. I think that made a lot of sense because you're right, there is no right answer to it. But I think there's always a time where you feel that you've become very important to the family and the fact that some things for me it happened like that.
Yeah.
That I started feeling that okay, this work cannot be done without me.
हाँ, और ऐसा होता नहीं है.
It's not true.
It's not true. If you can manage.
जब delegate करते हैं
exactly,
तो वो हो जाता है.
Exactly. If you can manage so much at work, जैसे आप अपना सेल्स खुद मैनेज कर रहे हो, आप अपना मार्केटिंग खुद मैनेज कर रहे हो, आप अपना प्रोक्योरमेंट खुद मैनेज कर रहे हो, फिर आप हायर कर रहे हो, फिर आप जिनको हायर कर रहे हो, देयर ऑल्सो यू आर इवेल्युएटिंग राइट कि वो बंदा इस काम के लिए फिट होगा या नहीं होगा एटसेट्रा. सो इट्स हार्ड टू बिलीव दैट आप वर्क पे आप इतना कुछ कर लेते हो, बट एट होम यू आर नॉट एबल टू मैनेज द सेम थिंग. इट्स हार्ड टू बिलीव. इट्स जस्ट बिकॉज वी आवरसेल्व्स फाइंड इट हार्ड टू लेट गो. हमें ऐसे लगता है कि अगर मेरा बच्चा एक राइस भी खा रहा है तो वो करेक्टली कुक्ड होना चाहिए, वो ऑर्गेनिक तो होना ही चाहिए, उसका पानी निकलना चाहिए,
सैनिटाइज होना चाहिए.
हाँ, एग्जैक्टली. सो आई थिंक वी जस्ट नीड टू बी अ लिटिल रिलैक्स्ड ऑन दैट. एंड लाइक यू सेड, किड्स आर एक्सट्रीमली रेजिलिएंट.
Yes.
And we just fail to remember that most of the times. Most of the times we feel that it's our responsibility to make sure that everything is perfect.
Yes.
And the moment they become 3 years old, they are going to birthday parties and having chocolate and chow mein. So then it's fine. So I think we just need to take it easy a little bit on that front, plus delegate.
I think, women also have fewer role models to look up to.
Yes.
Who have achieved, managing and balancing motherhood and professional careers. There are a lot of times, most of the professions where women have seen other women is, sort of profession.
Choosing one side, yes.
Yes, choosing one side.
Yes.
Either they are only doing that or this.
Yes.
And I'd like to hear from you as well. But I feel that you don't really need to find role models. You can become one which fits your entire balance of how you want to do things.
I think मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि I really wish there were more role models. Because a lot of times, it becomes easier. A lot of times, instead of trying to figure out everything from scratch, it's like saying that when you are implementing a CRM or an ERP in your organization, right? It's not just for the technology. It's also because you get to adopt the best practices that are out there. Which means कि बहुत चीज़ें जो discover हो चुकी है, आपको दोबारा discover करने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. You just have to copy that and then do your discovery on an axis where not enough has been discovered, or where you have your niche and you want to sort of excel, right? So I think the same thing applies, I would feel, even on this front. I wish there were more role models. I wish they were talking more openly about challenges of balancing motherhood and work. I wish that they were really bringing the reality to the front. For example, if you really look at the maternity break concept also, right? On paper, is 6 months enough? I would say no.
Yeah.
We really need more, because till 1 year, even WHO recommends that up till 1 year you have to, for example, feed the kids, right? How do I feed the kids if I'm at work the whole day? So how do I balance that? And if you look at it the other side, right? That 6 months, we may feel it's not long from a motherhood perspective. But from work perspective, 6 months is enough to make you irrelevant. So when people, like my friends, have joined back their work, even when I joined back, for example, it took me really a long time to, get back into the groove, or to get back to the same position. For my friends, for example, who are in corporate jobs, to get back to the same positions where they were prior to taking the maternity break. And it's not the corporate's fault, because they need to fill those positions, right? Work has to go on, so somebody has to do it. जिन्होंने बहुत सारी गलतियाँ की होती and वो उनके बारे में openly बोल रहे होते, तो शायद हमें भी best practices का ज़्यादा information मिलता, and that would have, eased our life a little more. But having said that, I agree that, honestly, I've been lucky कि I had a supporting father, I have a great husband, I have great colleagues. And second thing, and this is more important, and this is something that I really have started talking about vocally, because I think I myself suffered through this, that majority of the times, at least that this is my experience for myself, right? Majority of the times, the bias was in my mind. मुझे ऐसा लगता रहता था कि मेरे कलीग शायद मुझे जज कर रहे हैं, मेरा मैनेजर शायद मुझे जज कर रहा है, मेरा मैनेजर सोच रहा होगा कि अरे ये तो लड़की है, पता नहीं इसको पता होगा या नहीं होगा, या मेरा जो पीयर है वो मुझे जज कर रहा होगा कि ठीक है ये तो इतना अच्छा काम नहीं कर रही है, या you know they may have lower standards for me or they may have lower bars for me. And to my surprise, majority of the times, and I will say majority means I'm even willing to go up to like 99.99% of the times, it was my own inhibition or my own view which was different, not my colleague's view or my manager's view or my co-founder's view or my team's view. At no point honestly have they verbalized or in any way demonstrated that they feel that I'm less capable, or they feel that I'm not doing a good job, or I mean of course on few things I'm not doing a good job, and you know everyone will give each other feedback, but you know I'm saying more thematically or in general that I am privileged because I am a woman. I don't think at any point in time people have verbalized that or in any way demonstrated it by their behaviors or actions, at least not to the extent to which I have felt it, because the bias has been in my own head. Most of the times I have only felt कि शायद वो मुझे जज कर रहा है. जैसे मैं कोई इन्वेस्टर प्रेजेंटेशंस में भी जाती हूँ, a lot of times मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि उनको ऐसा तो नहीं लग रहा है कि ये तो इसकी बीवी है तो ऐसे फालतू में, you know, she's just like an add-on over here. She's not doing any real work. It is not true. And in fact, one of my investors has said in so many words that the only reason I have invested in and this is our largest investor, who has said that, you know, when I met Sneha, I was so impressed. Even before Nikhil could meet him, or even before my team could meet him, I'd flown to Delhi to meet this guy. So he said that the only reason I've invested is because I thought Sneha is leading the company, and I thought she's so smart and so capable. I was almost sold the moment I met her. I didn't even know that she's married to you. I didn't even know that you are the CEO. I didn't know any of this. मैंने तो उसको देख के पैसे डाले. In spite of that, in majority of my meetings, I have felt कि अरे कहीं ऐसा तो नहीं है कि उनको ये लग रहा हो कि ये तो कुछ नहीं करती है. She's an add-on and all of that. And to like every time I have reflected upon it, I have come to the conclusion that it has single-handedly been my own bias playing against me and really not an outwardly bias. So I think the real message over here is just that I think a lot of self-belief is needed consciously to be put in from our end to really absorb the fact that, you know, we're doing a good job.
A bias is something which can be easily shattered. So whenever I have faced a bias, like, you know, when we were starting out a company for maternity wear, a lot of vendors told us कि मैडम आप ये कपड़े क्यों बना रहे हो? उनको तो नाइटी में घूमना होता है. So, and then another thing, when I was trying to get a loan from the bank or raise capital or debt fund, they would say that, okay, can I speak to your husband? And I used to like just scold them that, what do you mean this, that you ask me all the data, I know all my numbers. And then I went for an investor meeting and I gave a pitch and everything, and somebody there asked me, what does your husband do? And I got offended, okay, is he there in the room and all? Because I felt that, you know, I'm only sort of on my guard that this is a bias.
Yes.
But it's actually
absolutely,
not. You know, if it was a normal conversation, I would not have felt offended at all.
Exactly. Like if you go to a friend's house, और वो बोलेंगे कि अरे, where's your husband? Would you get offended?
No, I would be very happy to talk about my husband.
Precisely.
So,
I think absolutely.
So I think that we need to let our guard down and just like cut off the noise and like, okay, this is fine. This is not bias. It's just a conversation.
Yes.
And if it is at all a bias, we'll just shatter it.
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes, you know, you just need to be, I wouldn't say defensive, but actually offensive.
Right.
When you see that bias, very, very clearly. So if you see a bias very clearly, be offensive. But on other times, don't be defensive. I think that's what I'm hearing from you, and that's been my experience also. The majority of the times, what we're trying to do is be defensive.
Yes.
In advance. Even before things have come up. कि पहले ही से हम अपना डिफेंस फॉर्मेशन बना के रेडी रखते हैं कि कोई भी कुछ बोलेगा तो मेरे पास जवाब रेडी है उसका, बट एक्चुअली उसकी ज़रूरत नहीं है. इनफैक्ट इन दोज टाइम्स, यू नो, मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम्स वी कवर आउट कि भाई उसने ऐसे बोल दिया, मुझे बुरा लग गया, या यू नो आई एम लाइक, ओह माय गॉड, हाउ डू आई लाइक डील विद इट टाइप्स. Whereas those are times where we really need to sort of shatter the bias, as you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when we need to be offensive, let's be offensive, but other times, let's not be defensive. That's, I think, what I'm hearing from you, and I totally agree with it.
True. I think we should just let things be and be confident ourselves and chart our own journeys.
But the question is how?
The question is how. So tell us how. I think a lot of people will be interested to know from two women entrepreneurs.
So why don't you tell me first? How do you think you have overcome those moments of self-doubt and channelized that energy into moving ahead?
So see, there have been a lot of moments of self-doubt and a lot of struggle moments. And for me, it's, I guess, doubly hard because I'm a solo founder. So I don't have anybody else to talk to
Yes.
and share my struggle for work. Obviously, I have my husband who's my bouncing board and I discuss things with him, or I have my friends. But they're looking at it from an outside perspective.
Yes.
Right? And my struggles and my demons and everything are my own. And a lot of times I say that running a company is, like having a dementor on your head. Like, if you've read Harry Potter,
Yes.
it sucks out all your energy and all your happiness several times in a day. And you'll be like, oh no, ek naya problem aa gaya. But at the same time, as you go forward in your journey and you're like, ठीक है, मुझे तो ये करना ही है, अब मुझे सिर्फ solution ढूंढना है. I think my journey has itself made me so mature to understand that yes, troubles and tribulations and challenges are all a part of it. And finally, if I change my mindset to be one of problem solving and look at everything as an external problem and not my failure, then it becomes a lot easier. Because I used to look at every problem as my personal failure, कि ये मैं नहीं कर सकती. But rather than that, look at it ki how do I solve it? And if this is not getting solved, what is the next way forward? And that has helped me to, grow further and become more mature in my own mindset that, it's finally something that I'm doing as work. It's not really me as a personal thing ki this is my performance or anything. But it is just work which needs to be done, and what is the best way of doing it.
Yeah, honestly, I think it's a journey, right? I think there are a lot of moments where I have had self-doubt. I think one thing that has helped me is also talking to other women, because a lot of times, what we've done is, because there are so few women founders, there are so few women senior managers around us, right? We are a very, very women-friendly company. Like in Zolo, all my business leaders are women. And still I feel that there are not enough women, right? If I go to any event, if I go to any startup founders meet, etc., there are rarely more than one or two other women hanging out in a group of, let's say, 100 people. So I think in general, it's a sparse space. There aren't enough. And therefore, a lot of times what we are doing is we are setting our standards by looking at our male colleagues. Whether it's our husband, whether it's our co-founders, whether it's our other male colleagues in the company. So a lot of times we are trying to set our standards by looking at them. And some of the problems that we go through, they don't go through. And that is very natural. It's a very biological, a very natural thing. So उसमें कोई शर्म की बात या उसमें कोई ऐसी बात नहीं है कि this is मतलब मेरे साथ कोई discrimination हो रहा है या मेरे साथ कोई bias है या मेरे साथ ऐसी बात नहीं है या और ऐसी भी बात नहीं है कि I should like kill myself कि oh my god how this is so sad. And I'm not trying to bring in any bra-burning feminism angle either, right? I'm just saying it's different. Let's just acknowledge the difference. And therefore, sometimes I feel that, if I speak to other women who have been there, done that sort of, been there, done that sort of a space, it helps. Because it really sort of puts things in perspective. There are other people also, there are other women also who've gone through this space. Like so many times, right? I have to take calls in the morning, and sometimes I want to do it from home because later on in the day I have to, I want to spend time with the kids or I have to do something at home, etc. So I will lock the door and I'll take the call, and my kid will be banging on the door, mama, mama, mama. And then I feel that मेरे बाकी लोगों को तो ये प्रॉब्लम नहीं हो रही है, उनके बच्चे तो उनके दरवाजे पे आवाज़ नहीं कर रहे हैं, And I also feel bad कि यार वो बाहर में वो बैठे हैं. And then when I spoke to, for example, this woman who I really look up to a lot, and she said, I used to take calls and my kids used to be scratching the door the whole time. And I was like, okay, I'm not the only one who's going through this. Everybody is going through
Yes.
through the same challenge. So it's fine. If they scratch
Yeah.
the door once
I
a while.
switched off the camera and breastfed the child in a meeting. What can you do?
Huh.
There's a meeting, you have to.
And if you have to do that once in a while,
Yeah.
it's fine. So we just have to understand that, things are different for us. Not use that as an opportunity to compare, but use that as an opportunity to identify that we operate or we occupy a different space, and also use that as an opportunity to be comfortable in that space, seek help in that space, and at times, even if you do have self-doubt, which you will have, it's very natural,
Yeah.
just realize that there are other women out there who you can reach out
Yeah.
to and speak to, and if that helps you, please do that.
Yes. And I think one of the last things that I wanted to say is that not being present or not being in that meeting physically or not being in that networking event or not socializing impacts careers. And because visibility is equated to the fact that you are present and therefore you are more familiar with your boss or your manager.
Commitment. Visibility is
But that's
basically
not true
tantamount
at
to
all.
commitment in a
Correct.
lot of cases, yes.
And what I've realized is that, as a woman professional, it's not possible to have as many social commitments as you can do as a man.
Yes.
And whether we like it or
not
not,
just
that's
as a
fact.
man, I would say even as other women who may be working in
Correct.
corporate jobs, etc.
Who are probably not taking care of small children, right?
Yes.
So I think that is the demarcation.
And two at that,
Yes.
at the same time.
Yeah.
Whether they are apart or together, doesn't matter.
Yes.
If they are more in number, they are more in problem.
And I think it's a lot of times, and now as a manager also, I feel it's just the work that speaks for itself.
Yes.
It's not basically whether you were there at an event or not. If you're doing great work and you're delivering your outcomes, I think that is good enough.
Because sometimes thoda sa balance is also required. Like sometimes you also want to be out there because we also need some PR, we also need some visibility, so I think a little bit of that is required. But if you are not being able to do 100% of it, it's fine.
Yeah.
If you're able to do some of it, that's good enough. So maybe you can choose and prioritize, which is what I'm doing nowadays, that I try to prioritize what is it that I really want to do. And for everything else, I'll be very candid and say no.
So Sneha, Zolo Stays is a premium accommodation for students and young professionals.
Yes.
So what is the industry like for managed accommodation, and what are the differences that your company has brought into this segment vis-a-vis when it was, say, rather unorganized before that?
So I think managed accommodations is a more modern word. If I have to really take the traditional word for it, it would be something like a hostel, right? And hostels have existed forever. I think so long as people have started living in organized formats, in colonies, in communities, etc., hostels have started existing. So it's a very traditional concept at the root of it. And even today, the industry is largely unorganized. If you look at the total market size, and if you look at all the organized players, all of us put together, we will still be less than 1% of the market. So it's a very, very large market which exists in different shapes and forms, right? So for younger students, typically we've seen, we've also lived in hostels or PGs which were run by aunties, and they were very, very strict, and they had curfew times, and and the girls used to live together, and basically it was like a home away from home sort of a thing, right? And then there are hostels which are part of colleges or universities, which are a little more professionally managed. And then there are professional hostels, so working hostels, PGs again, which we've lived in when we were working. They're a little more transactional compared to what hostels were. So typically in a college hostel, everybody is your friend, and you know everyone and you're sort of interacting with everyone, and there's a different camaraderie between hostel mates versus even your classmates or friends and so on, right? In the new uh, avatar or in the PGs, as we call them, that is missing. So I think that is the one big change that we have brought in. What we have tried to do is bring two elements at the fore at all our properties or all our Zolos, the way we say it. And they are technology and community. So one is just integration of the workflows on technology, right? So that is something that was not existing at all prior to Zolo. So the discovery process, the booking process, your living experience, management of all your communications with the organizations, with the management, etc. Everything is digitized and it's on the app, so to say. And then we're using technology in some very interesting ways, right? For example, roommate matching. So can we match it by interests or lack of a few things? For example, if I'm a musician, will I want to share my room with a musician? Probably yes. More importantly, if I'm a non-smoker, I definitely want a non-smoker, right? So then can I match people together and sort of enable people to live better, live longer, live happier at Zolo?
So when you spoke about, setting it up and bringing a sense of process and branding to the entire ecosystem, I have never lived in a PG, but I remember when I used to go to college in Delhi University, a lot of my friends who had moved from different cities and towns to study there used to live in a lot of PGs
Yes,
around Delhi
yes.
University, Kamla Nagar, and all that. And they used to be really upset whenever we had an event or we were planning some dinner or something, because they had an in time at
Curfew.
7 p.m. a curfew time, and it was specially enforced only in the women PGs.
Yes.
And it's been a trend, to protect women. In the name of protecting women, you put more enforcements for women. So, have you done anything for women's security? How do you manage that?
Yes.
Do you have curfew times, or you manage women like professionals and let them have their end times and all that? But at the same time, security remains an issue in most urban cities.
Yes.
So, what do you do for women?
So when we started, so from IMK, right?
Yes.
So my biggest takeaway, or one of my takeaways was and what I really loved about IMK was the existence of the trust-based system.
Right.
So you remember how in mess they would आप बस entry कर दो, जो भी चाहिए लेके जाओ. And even in hostels there was it was more trust-based than anything else. So I think that is a principle that I carried from IMK and I've really applied it to our properties. So majority of our properties are unisex properties. So let me take a step back and say that there are two kinds of groups or two kinds of customers that we cater to. One of them is the working professionals, right? So these are kids who've joined their first jobs or second jobs, have graduated and are working now. For this group, what we've done is we've tried to bring in a lot more unisex properties because we believe that they are adults. They need to also learn to be able to, take responsibility for themselves at the end of the day. And in a real world, you can't keep men and women segregated all the times. So at the end of the day, they also need to learn how to adapt to that kind of a situation or how to adapt to sort of a setting like that. But we do understand that, for some of them, it might be uncomfortable. So we have women-centric properties as well. In fact, the largest one we are inaugurating on Women's Day this year.
Wow.
So for this group, we do not have any restrictions of timing, etc. We have biometric access in all our properties. We have CCTVs in all our properties. We have security guards in all our women properties, especially. We have wardens in all our properties, but we don't have a curfew time. So once you're in, you're safe. We'll take care of that. But if you're out, you're having a nice time, please do that. And even in a unisex property, in general, so in the last 8 years, and I obviously have to touch wood before that, we've not had any incidents of any sort of misbehavior towards women. When it comes to students, we do have a curfew time. That is really more of a requirement that we have seen from campuses as well as from parents,
Yeah.
which means students can ask for extended curfew times against some events or activities that are happening, which even the management is aware of. They can approve it, we can track it, and if there is any violation, then that can be reported and that can be managed through subsequent penalties or whatever. But what we are definitely trying to ensure is that women are not at a disadvantage because there is curfew times and therefore they are the ones missing out on all events and all activities, and or they have to sneak out or do all those sort of things. It's very clear and transparent. Because of technology, because of communication, I think we're making some change there.
Yeah, that's great, because I think that was pretty much a need of the hour, because at least women professionals need to have independence and freedom.
Yeah.
They can't be treated as children, and just because that there are security issues around, I guess a woman can also take decisions for herself on what she feels and which
Yes.
environment is safe or not.
Yes,
Rather than
absolutely.
being imposed curfews on and
Yes.
all of that.
So I think we've been a believer of that in everything, that we want to give our customers the maximum decision making. So we've never branded ourselves as a premium accommodation or a budget accommodation. Even today on Zolo, you can book a room for 5,000 rupees a month and then go all the way up till 50,000 rupees a month. It really depends on what you want. So what kind of sharing you're comfortable with, what kind of location you're comfortable with, what kind of budget you're comfortable with. It's entirely on the customer to make that decision. Similarly, in terms of, if you want to choose a unisex property or a women-only property, if you want to choose a property which has an in-time or does not have an in-time, it has women-only staff, it has mixed staff. It's really out there for you to choose. But if you do want to make that decision, then we'll give you enough options to make that decision for yourself. I don't want to dictate, for example, like the mom store doesn't dictate what kind of clothes my children should wear, giving me enough options to buy all the way. So very, very similar. By the way, I love mom store. I think my kids are growing up wearing mom store day in, day out.
Thank you so much for that.
I've shared pictures also, isn't
Yes,
it? So many
yes,
times, yes. Especially the Indian wear, it's so good. It's so good.
Thank you, and I'm so glad to hear that. And it's always amazing to listen to a customer talking about it, and
Yeah,
I'm sure when there are so many young professionals and students who thank you for giving them that safety and security net, right? Because they are staying away from their families, so for a lot of them it's their first time.
Yes.
And so it's like you're building a home away from home.
Yes. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're trying to do that, I think.
So thank you, Sneha,
Thank
for
you so
this
much for having me.
amazing discussion. And I wish that it could just go on, and we can talk about it all the next few hours. But I think we have a time constraint.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
And yeah, thank you so much. It was absolutely lovely talking to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. This was nice. Thank you so much.